I will share my screen. Okay. Okay, so you were an audience member, went to the presentations, and so kind of now what? So that's what we're doing today. And so we wanted to really just keep this momentum going. Okay, and so networking, it can be scary. It's a weird word. This is maybe the first time that you've interacted with me, and maybe it was even a little bit scary to come here today. So props to you for doing that. But I want us to kind of reframe the ideas around networking and to make it a more relatable experience when you're meeting new folks that have a lot of the same interests that you do. Okay, and so the networking is about finding your community, and that's what unites us as human beings and creates a feeling of something bigger than ourselves. Okay, for me, for example, I got super into like personal finance as well, and there's a lot of people just don't talk about their personal finances, and I got really interested in that. So I started reading and I was like, man, nobody around me talks about this stuff. And I found a community online. And so I found a podcast. They have an online Facebook group that I engage with. And so that's one way that I'm still able to start to think, okay, I'm not the weird one who only thinks about personal finance, but there's an entire community out there as well. And so it could be a little bit scary at first, but it also helps us ground us and help us find that sense of community. Okay, so for those that are here, I'd love to know kind of what your 1-year goals are. So from today, what are some types of experiences that you want to have under your belt a year from now? Okay, and preferably I like to talk about maybe some outside of the classroom experiences.
Hi, this is Fiona speaking.
Hi, Fiona.
Hi. So some goals that I have this year are like first year goals is like to get into research, but also to like especially like with the conference we just had, start making like more connections like through like LinkedIn, and just research more about like the different companies that we don't like necessarily hear from like in the public medium of things, just so I know like what different paths are available to me. Along with I'm not sure if you attended during the conference, there was like a career planning segment or whatnot, but I'm also trying to check off what Dylan had put in his like checklist as well.
Beautiful. So it sounds like you have some action steps that you're trying to put into place.
Shirley, yeah, speaking. I want to do the same thing where I really want to get into like research on campus, but I also want to, depending on like the COVID situation, I do want to do like a research internship over the summer and start like looking into those.
Love it. So I'm so glad, like you guys both of you get me excited about what we're talking about today, because today we're going to be giving some actionable steps to help you build that community and allies, regardless of what you're hoping to achieve. So I hear internships, I hear some research, I hear just making connections with others, building that community to really help confirm your identity in your chosen field. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm excited. So first, we need to know where we're going. So now that you have your goal, now there's a few things that we could do. We could start looking at maybe some position descriptions. So if you're looking for an internship, right, we need to start looking at, even if we're not ready until next summer, right now actually is the recruiting season for next summer. Right now, I don't know, that's crazy. It's like 6 to 8 months away. But we need to start thinking of, what do I need to be prepared for? What do I need to start doing now that will make me ready come summertime? Okay. And so looking at those position descriptions on what responsibilities am I going to be in charge of? What skills do I need to have? That's what we need to start thinking about right now. Okay. Pinpointing that community. So growing your network. Okay. So we already talked about some online communities. I talked about like the Facebook group, podcast. So I'd love to hear kind of who's in your circle. What are some folks that you can kind of tap into that is in your kind of immediate circle?
I know, like, actually know Fiona. We've studied together a lot of times.
Sweet.
Yeah, she's actually one of my close, like, I would say friends, but also like peers in like the science, like science, like, like STEM majors. I also have gotten close to one grad student, which she has like helped me a lot on looking up research opportunities on campus.
Love it. So you're already starting to build that pretty close connection. Where do you both go to school?
Ball State
Okay.
University.
Cool. Okay. So friends, grad students, who else?
Yeah, I'm not sure about Charlene, but for me, I know that I'm still like in the beginning of that like community like building. Like there's definitely like with like faculty and like even like the LSAMP group as well. There are many like possible connections that can come just like with like enough effort or whatnot. But for me, like they're not really set in stone just yet.
Sure. Okay. So they're at least within arm's length. Maybe not somebody you feel super confident in just approaching and saying, hey, let's have a conversation. But they're close-ish, right? And so here's some folks that are in our network that are ready to help us, that are hoping for connections as well. So family members, even if they're not necessarily in the field that you're in, maybe they know somebody that is. Okay, so a friend of a friend, a family member of a family member, professors, you talked about faculty members, the career centers. I'm just curious, you could say yes or no. How many have you attended or stepped a foot into your career center yet?
A slight half step, but of course I know that I can do more with time.
Okay. Good. So they are advocates for you. They want to help. I promise you. So student organizations are other ones, professional groups, right? So those are ones that you might kind of at least get your foot in the door. A lot of these are national organizations that are doing virtual conferences, a lot of times free for students. So that's another way to at least start getting your foot in the door. Alumni, and so you mentioned LinkedIn before, and we'll talk more about LinkedIn a little bit later. But that's another immense opportunity there to start connecting. And then supervisors, current, past, and some other organizations. Okay, so we're definitely going to talk more about that. But those are people that you can absolutely reach out to that we don't always think about. And just like you all said, your friends already, maybe classmates that you have as well can also be in that network. Okay, so the first thing is you got to talk to them. Okay, but the key here is you need to be able to advocate for yourself. We need to be able to let them know what we're interested in. Okay, so what are we hoping to gain within the next year or so? Uh-oh, dropped my mouse. So what are we hoping to gain? So we need to be able to talk about that. Some career plans, right? It's got to be more than just, hey, next year I'm taking these classes, okay? But what do you want to be when you grow up, I guess? I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, okay? And then I put in here nurturing that network. So once you make that initial conversation, we have to be able to follow up with them. And again, we're going to be talking more about that in a little bit, okay? And so there are techniques that we use, okay, to develop these new relationships and build rapport. And one of these I've kind of spoken on before. I don't know if you were attended, but is informational interviewing. And I know Dylan spoke about this in his presentation. It's informational interviews. Are you all familiar with what informational interviews are?
Sort of, but it wouldn't be bad if you were to explain it once more.
Okay. All right. So in these informational interviews, these are going to be opportunities for us to grow that network. So let me just skip ahead a little bit. Okay. So how are we going to grow that? One option that I love using, it's actually how I found my current position. I was graduating. So I've been in my position for a year now. I was graduating May of 2019, and I wanted to get back to Northwest Indiana. But I didn't know anyone in Northwest Indiana that had a job kind of in career services. And so my classmate actually put me in touch with her sorority sister. And I held an informational interview there. And then after that went well, the sorority sister of my colleague passed me along to a colleague of hers who was in career services, who's the director that I now currently work for. And so I did an informational interview with my current director that I didn't know was going to be my supervisor at that time. Okay. And so what informational interviewing is, it's where the roles are reversed. So now you are the interviewer. You have the opportunity to speak to a professional that's in the industry that you're a part of. Okay. Maybe has a job that you'd want in the future, or works at a company that you've been really eyeing. Okay. And so for me, for example, I know I kind of lacked social capital when I was an undergrad. Like I didn't know a lot of people who were professionals, especially because I was a first generation college student. And so this informational interviewing is a technique that we can use to start building that network, even if you don't have one already. Okay. And so this is about, informational interviewing is about investing in relationships, not just all of my time on doing research online for job postings, putting in my applications, things like that. Okay. And like I said, so this is about investing in relationships. It's not hitting somebody up and saying, hey, can you get me an interview? Or, hey, here's my resume. What do you think? Right? That's not developing a relationship. That's a one-way street where it becomes a lot more transactional. Okay. And so we are looking to build these valuable allies. And so the reason that these work is because people like talking about themselves. People enjoy the work that they do typically when they're at the kind of the professional level. And so they love talking about themselves, the work they're doing, and even mentoring, feeling like they can help somebody along the way. You know, every one of these professionals has gotten where they are by somebody helping them open a door. And so they wanted to be able to do that same thing. And so some of the benefits is you get to grow your network. You're establishing kind of likability from trusted professionals within these spaces, and you're gaining some insider knowledge. So a better understanding of what the jobs entail, what keeps them up at night. And those are things that you could take into future conversations, even in interviews when you start to have them. Okay. And so when we start doing these asks and we start reaching out, we want to be clear, succinct, and make it really easy for them to say yes. And so there's things like Calendly or Doodle that essentially you put your calendar in this portal and you send the link to an individual and say, hey, here's my Calendly link. I'd love it if we can chat for 15 minutes. Okay. And so here's kind of a framework. And so Michelle's going to send this out later, but here we have a framework where there's actually a YouTube video. It's a 7-minute long YouTube video, so not super long, that goes into how you do this. Okay. And so there's also a PDF that I have, a template that I can send on how to do the ask. What do I actually state in the email? Okay. And so I within these resources, I can give you the nuts and bolts, and that's what I'll do after. And I can even, let me wait a little bit and I'll copy that link and put it in the chat once we're done recording. But we're looking at a framework that's Tiara. Okay, that's the acronym TIARA. So T is for trends. So one of your first questions when you're conducting this informational interview is, what is kind of the big picture? What are trends happening in the industry right now? Kind of give you a better sense of what am I getting myself into? And then insights. So what in particular were they successful in? What did they do really well? What gives them joy, right? Because now you're starting to build a calming sense within this conversation. And these conversations are only, between 20, no more than 30 minutes. Okay. And so you're really starting to make the person that you're interviewing feel comfortable. Once they're comfortable, then we start asking them for advice. We start transitioning to now a mentorship role where, what would you do in my position? I'm a first year, I'm a second year student that hasn't had an internship yet, hasn't had a research assistantship yet, and I want to. So what would you kind of recommend for me to do? And so now they've gone from feeling good about themselves, talking about their successes, to now a mentorship role. And now you're starting to ask them for resources. Okay, so what is something that they're looking up that makes them feel confident in their day-to-day? How are they developing professionally? Okay, and then lastly, assignments. So what are things that they're working on? What are things that I can be doing as an undergraduate student to work on to prepare me? Okay, and so when you're having these conversations, you're starting to gain insight, both positive and hopefully also the negative. Like, what keeps you up at night? As soon as you start knowing, like, that is one of the most important conversation or questions in the entire conversation, is what keeps you up at night? Because you could then take that information to your next informational interview, and you could start to come up with some problems to start solving. Okay. And the last question, the very last question you want to ask is, can you think of one or two people I should also be chatting with? Because now you're starting to grow that network organically, right? Because now they're going to send an email on your behalf and saying, hey, Jorge, I just had a conversation with Fiona and she's awesome. She was hoping to spend about 15 minutes with you. I just wanted to electronically introduce you. And now again, you're starting to build allies. And that's the goal of this, is to build people within your network that have interests like you do, and want to help. Okay. And again, it's all done organically, right? You're not feeling the need to sell something like, hey, look at my resume, I want a job. That's not what this is. What this is putting together that foundational groundwork for when you do need something in the future. Okay. So the critical steps after that is to then send your thank you. Okay. So within that thank you, you want to give a piece of advice that they previously gave you. So something that really resonated with you, how you benefited from that. And then again, ask for future advice. You're developing a mentorship kind of role right now. And so you're going to keep asking for advice. And so you want to make sure that you're nurturing these networks, whether that's, sending a thank you card, a birthday gift, something super small, just tell them that you're thinking about them, an article you might have seen, and say, hey, I read this article, I thought you might be super interested, right? That's how we're nurturing that network, right? Are you commenting on their LinkedIn posts? Those are types of things that we can be doing to nurture the network. And so they're never going to get a raise, they're not going to get a bonus, etc., because of this one conversation. And they're doing this out of the kindness of their heart. And so this is the least we can do, is just send that thank you. Okay. So there's online communities out there, and they're hiring and they're looking for new college grads just like you. Okay. And so they're looking for entry level. And so we talked about some of the university job boards. That's Handshake, Simplicity. I know those are the two of the biggest ones in the college campus, but there's others. And some that might be pretty niche would be like diversityjobs.com, LSMRCE.org, which is affiliated with the LSAMP program, is another one that has a really nice job board. And then there's professional organizational websites. Okay. And so I just took a little screenshot of researcher type positions that you can start looking at. Okay. And these are in your higheredjobs.com. Okay. So what's something that you've had to save up for? I'd love to hear from you. What's something that you've really had to like save up for when you were a little kid? Like you saved your money. I really needed this one thing.
It was not when I was a little kid, but it was my sophomore year when I bought like this laptop that I'm on right now.
Okay.
That was like the most money I've ever spent at one time. So yeah.
That was a big deal. Was there anything else? And I just asked that because I remember mine were like N64 video games, like Mario Kart, GoldenEye, things like that. You got to save little by little. And even so, another analogy would be like when you're baking, right? You got to put together all the ingredients. And once you put together all the ingredients, mix it up, put it in the pan, you got to wait, right? You can't just eat it right away. And so it's the same exact thing with networking, right? We need to be able to take our time and cultivate these relationships, right? When we're going and immediately asking for something, that then becomes that one-way street. And so we want to cultivate these relationships so that it's just kind of the same thing. Like once we're actually able to do the ask, you've developed a relationship, right? Quote unquote, you've put the ingredients together, you've put it in the oven for like 30, 40 minutes. Now relate those 30, 40 minutes to lots and lots of weeks, maybe months of developing that relationship. Well, now when we're ready to buy that product, buy the computer, or actually eat the cake, okay? So now it's a sense of, hey, I'm actually looking for a research position in the summer. I was wondering if you knew anybody that would be interested in somebody with my skill set. Now you can make the ask because you put in the work before, right? So you've put in the investment in time and relationships and building that community. So referrals turn into jobs, not sending out 100 applications. So I'm a career consultant and I help students find jobs too. And I have students that say, oh, I've sent out 100 applications. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Why have you done that? Right? Because they haven't spent the time to develop these relationships and reach out to their network. So the referrals are what turning into jobs. They're spending time investing in others and showing the value that they can provide, that you can provide. Okay. So think about in terms of the recruiter, the person that's hiring, the faculty member that's hiring a researcher over the summer, right? As the faculty member, I'd much rather hire somebody who took the time to know me and can offer something to me versus someone that I only know from an application. Okay. And so we're kind of running out of time. We have about 5-ish minutes left. And so I just wanted to make sure I take a moment to talk about LinkedIn. I have another entire presentation on just making a beautiful LinkedIn profile. And then another presentation on using that LinkedIn profile to really start developing the network within LinkedIn. But today, with only a few minutes left, I wanted to at least get a little bit surface level with what LinkedIn can provide. Okay, and so within LinkedIn, this is an opportunity for you to start finding your in at the company. Okay, so there are first degree, second degree connections that you can start making. And so when I'm pulling up my LinkedIn right now. And so when you have your LinkedIn profile, this right here with the headline, there's a certain way that we want to have a headline and not just the generic sophomore student studying biology at Ball State, right? We want to talk and make yourself an actual person rather than a robot, okay? And so the headline alone is going to be catching. Having an about section that really makes sense to who you are, what you're looking for, that really helps the person that's viewing your page, again, know that you're not just a robot, okay? And so let me, again, I have an entirely different presentation about just the LinkedIn profile, but making those connections. Let me see if I could show you. So here, there's this first here. And so this first means that I am a friend of them. I know who they are, or at least have met them digitally. We've had a conversation before. And so I've accepted them as my friend. When you see a second or a third, that means they're a friend of a friend, or a connection of a connection. Okay, where you can even reach out to them and say, hey, I see that we both know Christina Baltazar. And I see the work that you're doing. I would love it if we could have a quick conversation. Okay, and so those are a few things that we can even do on LinkedIn to start building those relationships. Okay, so that's actually the last thing. Are there any other questions that you might have for me? I see you have a meeting at 7. Have a great weekend. This will be recorded. So just kind of today's takeaway. Fiona, maybe I can't see if you're still there, but Fiona, so what would be maybe some takeaways for you for today?
Definitely, I already had a LinkedIn account before, but it was kind of like that generic, like, oh, I'm a biochem student or whatnot. So I'll definitely try to have a makeover with my LinkedIn to make it more personal and like approaching. And thank you for letting me know about what the first and second thing was about, because I didn't know what that was when I first went on. And takeaway for me, I guess, is like I'm kind of in that position of where like I will be reaching out to people, and possibly the things that I've said are connections. Probably are like what you were talking about when you're saying like the information interviews. I like that strategy of being able to just get like information from another person and not necessarily have like a transaction or something on the line. So I will definitely use that. And yeah, I was taking notes as you were doing your presentation. So I do have like some of the websites that you were talking about, as well as like what idea you wanted to portray. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So I'm gonna actually stop the recording in a moment. If you wanted to, I could send you the links kind of to the using that framework of informational interviewing. And so just 3 things that I was really hoping that we do take away today is: 1, make sure you have your goal in mind. 2, define that network. So know who you can actually reach out to. And then 3, just make sure that we're investing in people versus making these transactional kind of conversations. So let me